we go.
I'm sorry for the delay. We were all still casting votes for the big DY vote last night. I'm kidding, of course. We're starting the planning board a few minutes late due to a technical snafu, but in no way, we're underway. 5:35, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Seeing that we have our town planner right to our right, Kathy is sitting here for the full board, minus Chris is on my left, and we're starting with the discussion for the annual town meeting coming up in May of 2019, accessory dwelling units. And Kathy, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think at the last meeting you had on November 7th, I wasn't there, but I did watch the video of the meeting. And I know that you guys had quite a few questions and comments about different things, mainly related to unit sizes, the lot sizes, owner occupancy, clear exclusion of things like mobile homes and RVs and houseboats as being an accessory dwelling unit, and then possibly extending the amnesty portion of the bylaw. So what you'll find in the beginning part of this memo here is answering some of the questions that were brought up at that meeting. With regard to the number of existing accessory, we don't call them accessory dwelling units in our bylaw, we call them accessory apartments, just so people understand it at home. Although they've probably heard quite a bit about accessory dwelling units lately. Right now, we have 51 active accessory apartments. 44 of those are family-related, and 7 are affordable, but only one of those is actually on the subsidized housing inventory. There was at one time an additional 30 accessory apartment special permits issues, but they've been abandoned over time, with 25 of those being family-related and 5 being affordable. Family-related, probably the family member no longer needed the space. Affordable, maybe they just simply sold the house and the new owner wasn't interested in having an affordable unit. With regard to lot sizes, we talked about that briefly with some information that we had gotten from the assessor's office. And of the 13,355 residential properties, and those are properties that currently have a residential home on them or are vacant lot, not just vacant lots. 80% are 10,000 square feet or larger, 42% are 15,000 square foot or larger, and only 21% are 20,000 square foot or larger, and literally only 13% currently meet the minimum lot requirement of 25,000 square feet. So we do have a lot of really small lots in town. The accessory apartment, as you know, right now allows an accessory apartment on a lot of 10,000 square foot or larger. So that might help you with your discussions regarding lot size. I also went and discussed a little bit about the current units that are out there and what size lots they are on. Of the 7 affordable, most of the lots are 22,000 square feet or greater, with one at about 17,800. And then the lots for the family related, a lot of those are smaller. And those are 15 were below the 15,000 square feet and 21 were less than 20,000 square feet. So just kind of give you a little bit of background data on where we stand right now. There's also some discussion with regard to residential density, and we had talked about how dense Yarmouth is in comparison to other communities. Although we are no longer the densest, Dennis is now that has the highest residential density based on the stat Cape Cod of approximately 732 units per square mile, and we're a close second with 691 units. The next closest town is Falmouth with 480, and it goes down from there all the way down to Truro with 142. So we are already very dense from a residential standpoint. I know there was some discussion with regard to maybe eliminating the owner occupancy. I'm cautioning the board a little bit about eliminating that. I think people are going to be a little bit more careful on who they rent to if they're living right next to them versus if both the main dwelling unit and the accessory unit were rental units. Plus, there's also, if there's any issues, there's someone right there on site that the building department can talk to rectify things quickly versus trying to find some potentially off-Cape developer who's been renting it as some type of investment property. So something to take into consideration with regard to that. Tom Barron did mention a ZBA application that had gone through recently on Route 28, where they had given some relief to allow both of the units to be rental units. I looked a little bit more closely into that, and that was a variance. I think Joanne had a question about whether it was a variance or a special permit. I don't think it was related to the accessory apartment. I think it was relief from some other variance that had been given in a B2 zoning district. It's a little bit different than what we're talking about, but I wanted to give you guys that information. There was some discussion on whether we needed to continue with the amnesty that was included in the bylaw, which has actually expired already. It expired in 2011. Discussing it with Mary Wagon, the Affordable Housing Administrator, and also with Mark Grills, the Building Commissioner. Everyone kind of thinks it's kind of run its course already, and that anyone who needed the amnesty had already applied for it. The amnesty had been extended already several times. And also right now, like if somebody comes and they have an apartment and Mark looks and says, okay, is this something that is lawfully pre-existing non-conforming grandfathered use? And if it is, they can use it without any restriction. Or if it isn't, then he sends them just to this section to see if they want to get an accessory apartment, and they can apply for a special permit through that. So I think we're okay with that right now. We don't really need to add anything with regard to the amnesty. The type of accessory unit, again, getting back to the RVs and that type of thing, there is a section in the bylaw right now that basically says you can't occupy any camping or recreational vehicle. So there's already something in there. And there's also, Mark noted that all the mobile home parks are prohibited, so wouldn't be allowed to be used somewhere else through an accessory. He did note that zoning doesn't have any jurisdiction over boats on the water. I'm not sure how many people would try to do a houseboat, but that was one of the things that had been brought up. Section 407 does indicate that the accessory apartment shall be designed so that the appearance of the building remains that of a one-family residence. I'm not sure how much a houseboat would apply to that. I did add a little bit of language in the draft in here to basically ensure that that also applies to any detached accessory structures. So I think we might be able to be covered in that respect. There have been a lot of other discussions about what other towns have been doing with the accessory dwelling units. We had Kyle Pedicini, our Economic Development Coordinator, get in touch with a bunch of different communities and develop a summary table that's in here to kind of give everyone an idea of what's allowed in other communities or what other communities are proposing to amend. He also had a nice little summary that he gave ahead of the spreadsheet. They do have other communities do have accessory dwelling units based on a percentage of the main dwelling unit, and it's typically either the habitable floor space is what it is. Minimum lot sizes, only 5 of the 14 have a minimum lot size at all. Brewster did pass their accessory dwelling unit bylaw, I believe Monday or Tuesday night, and they do allow they have minimum lot size of if you're over 30,000 square feet, you can do it by right, but if you're under 30,000 square feet, you need a special permit.
For the lot.
For the lot, yeah. Parking requirements, everybody had some type, pretty much, of a parking requirement. Restrictions, Barnstable had some related, family-related, and other Truro, P-Town, Wellfleet were restricted to affordability. Talked a little bit, special permit by right seems to be split across the Cape as who's doing what. Maximum permits per year, a few towns were setting limits on them. Brewster set a limit of 20, Chatham's looking at 10, and Eastham's looking at 12 per year. Some of them also restricted the number of bedrooms. Right now, we don't have any restriction on the number of bedrooms. Obviously, it would be very closely tied to the septic systems. Aquifer protection, the Brewster, basically no accessory dwelling unit in the Zone 2 at all, but most of the communities dealt with it through some type of Board of Health sign-off or needing to meet the septic disposal requirements for wastewater. Most towns had an owner occupancy requirement, although Harwich and P-Town did not. A lot of them who had an affordability restriction did require that the deed restriction be recorded at the registry. Only Chatham has an amnesty right now, and they did note that most of the bylaws are less liberal than the model bylaw that was presented to the board at I don't know how many meetings ago. So that gives you a brief summary of some of what other towns are doing. We did have a housing listening session on November 29th. staff and numerous members of the planning board. Norm and Tom Roach attended. And there was a lot of comments with regard to accessory apartments, and I see some people from that meeting here tonight, and I know some other people are interested in speaking about it. Housing Assistance Corporation also sent directly to each of the planning board members a copy of their attached Housing on Cape Cod High Cost of Doing Nothing report, so that's been distributed in your packet. So if you look at the latest edits that have been done on the draft accessory apartment bylaw, which is draft number 4. After that.
Yep.
The things that are highlighted in yellow are stuff that's either been edited or were things that were going to be further discussed by the planning board. But for the benefit of the people in the audience, the emphasis of the changes in our accessory apartments, right now we allow it for family-related and affordable, but we require a deed restriction for the affordable, and someone needs to go through the Ready Renter program in order to find an appropriate person, affordable person for the affordable unit. This is lessening those requirements, so basically as long as if you know somebody who meets the income eligibility and you're going to rent it to them at the fair market rate, you can rent it to somebody you know. So people might be a little bit more comfortable renting to someone they know versus someone that gets chosen off of a ready renter list, and then having to go through that whole process of paying for that name on the ready renter list and also vetting them. We also expanded the definition of family-related because we know that the concept of families are expanding a little bit, so giving a little bit more leeway to the Zoning Board of Appeals to make the determination on who's family in order to expand the use of the accessory apartment. So I don't know if you wanted to go through each item.
First, if anybody in the public wants to speak on it, I'll let them speak first and then let the board go from there.
Gentleman, raise his hand.
I'm getting there. I'm
No,
sorry.
I didn't know if you saw him.
I'm going to move again. Is there anybody here in the audience who wants to speak to this part? We have one, we have two. Sir, I understand your hand was first in the back. Do you want to come up to the podium, introduce yourself, either voting district or street address, and we will go from there.
Sorry, if she cries, I'll leave. My wife is a nurse, so she doesn't get off till has a later shift tonight. So daycare doesn't go that late. So Ryan Castle, 15 Mini Oak Circle in Yarmouthport. Also, I run a company on Midtech Drive with 10 employees, so I also worry about how I'm going to attract employees in the future. Also, I'm on the town's community economic development committee, and Mr. Weir asked me to also relay just informal comments they made at the last meeting when they brought this up, when he mentioned that y'all were going to look at it. The Community Economic Development Committee, their informal comments just were really should take a look at removing the family and the income restrictions, that it's really restricting the ability for employers to find housing for their employees and for some employees. And I'll go into that a little bit more in my personal comments as well. So that was really the comments I wanted to relay from that committee. On that note, on my personal side, I really think you guys should look further at the family and the income restrictions. 80% of median income, I've always thought that median income doesn't really account for what people can afford to pay for housing. You look at today's millennials, and I mean, I'm one, but I also have a ton of my staff, and our average pay is about $55,000, and it's still hard for them to do it because they're coming in with several $100s of student loan debt, they have car debt, things of that nature, and the 80% of median income just doesn't help a lot of them when you go there. So I would ensure that you get rid of the income limits, because you don't know people's personal situations with some of their what they can afford to pay. Yarmouth is fortunate enough to be able to say, you know what, if you remove that ability to cap what they can rent it for, it's not going to be unaffordable. Yarmouth's a pretty affordable place to live in the context of the Cape. And so when you look at that, the market rate rents will be affordable. But I'd really caution you look at the Housing Assistance Corporation's report. I mean, they're an affordable housing advocacy group and provider, and they're asking you to remove the income limits on accessory units. So I think that speaks volumes to what you need to be looking toward. Brewster just Monday night did it as well at their town meeting, and so I think you could look at what Falmouth and Brewster have been doing the last couple of years, Truro and Provincetown, the trend's going that way, And so I would caution you to ask you to look toward that way as the solution. Because I know you're restricting some of the family, and I saw the parental language, but that doesn't count for caregivers. That doesn't account for, what about if it's not a family, it's just like a child situation, right? Taking care of a parent. It said parental, you know.
It's
So I think
caregiving
you're trying
and
to
parental.
craft occupations, and you're trying to craft things, when if you just opened it up a little bit more, you would get what you want rather than trying to mandate it. You know, I think you look at the Cape Cod Commission's model and tweak it, and I know there's people that can help you through that and propose some changes to meet your needs. I would just encourage you to go that direction. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Ryan. Miss?
Hi, my name's Sarah Coles. I live at 34 Raymond Ave in South Yarmouth.
Did you say
I'd
Dara? Dara?
Sarah.
Sarah, I'm
Sarah,
sorry.
yes.
I mumble when I listen. I apologize.
No, it's okay. So first of all, I'd like to echo a lot of what Ryan just said. A lot of what he just relayed to you is a lot of what I was going to address at this time. I do urge you at this time to take up the Cape Cod Commission's model bylaw, and just as a note, this is my first time addressing a board, so if I refer to my notes, I apologize.
Oh, great.
I do that allowing individuals to rent out their accessory apartments to whomever they want at a market rate is incredibly important in this situation. For example, when I first moved back to the Cape after being away for several years, I couldn't find anywhere to live that was affordable in my income bracket, and that was after obtaining an advanced degree at school. Could not find an apartment around here. Had the accessory dwelling units bylaws been different in the different towns, I might have been able to find an affordable place to live instead of spending my 30th birthday in my in-laws' basement. So that because of situations like mine, which aren't unique to the Cape whatsoever, I do urge you to adopt a more liberal definition of who can live in the accessory dwelling units, as well as eliminating the deed restriction and allowing individuals to rent them out to whoever they want. This is really about adding supply to the inventory so that young people such as myself and Ryan don't have to leave to find affordable units here on the Cape. Thank you.
Sir?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Matthew Tague. I live over at 56 Main Street in Yarmouthport. Grew up pretty much most of my life in the town of Yarmouth. Lived here since 1978. I also served in your position for several years in the town of Barnstable. I was the member and chairman of the Barnstable Planning Board. Moved back to Yarmouth because I had an opportunity to buy a house with an accessory apartment. Near and dear to my heart, right? One of the reasons I joined the Barnstable Planning Board was to try to promote this concept under the terms of a supply and demand resolution for a very serious problem we're facing here in the Cape. I've been involved in affordable, subsidized housing in a number of projects here over the last 20 years. I own a business in the town of Dennis. My company has built over 1,500 homes here on the Cape. Very few people have done anything even close to that. So the housing issue is my life. It's my business, and it's where I live, and it's where I hope my kids get to come and live and grow up. I had the great honor of participating in last year's housing study with the Cape Cod Commission. A number of the town planners were involved, and several members of the board, the commission staff, and brought a bunch of consultants in, and we spent tons of money, and we had all these great ideas, and we looked at Moody's analytics, and we talked about money and head counts and income, and we're 20,000 units short. Ship sailed. We missed the boat. And we're victims of our own lack of vision in our own restrictive zoning bylaws. The accessory dwelling unit is probably the fastest and most efficient way we can begin to reuse a lot of the housing inventory that's here. I would highly recommend that the board look at taking any income restriction off the units, and I'll tell you why. I build stuff every day for a living. I build houses all the time. It's so expensive to build something right now that if you don't provide an economic incentive to do this, all you're going to get is more under the table, non-permitted, pseudo apartments that people kind of hide from, from the building commissioner, or because it's really expensive to do it right. So if you don't have an incentive to properly, design and build these units, it's not going to happen. Right now, I get a lot of calls, hey, I want to finish and over my garage, I want to build a little, mini house in my backyard. That sort of work costs anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000 to do. And people go, oh, that's baloney. Let me tell you something. I do it every day. I can tell you exactly what it costs to build a house. It's really expensive. Okay? So ignoring the issue or not allowing it to come into the discussion from a broad-based market perspective where everybody has a chance to do it reasonably, right? 10,000 square foot lots, can't build it bigger than the other house. Totally worth doing and totally worth pursuing. I will also say it's incredibly important for the property owner, the primary property owner, to be able to live in either one of the units, right? What a great concept. You've got an aging couple who really wants to stay in their neighborhood, but they've got the big 4-bedroom house and they want to just live in the garage. Great idea, creates community, creates a sense of somebody's, hey, you've got a little bit somebody there in the property to help things out. Really important component to this. And again, if that older couple, who's on a fixed income is going to go out and make an investment of $200,000 to create a legal code-compliant apartment, they need to cover the cost of that through lending and that sort of thing. It's the nature of the beast, and without that component, it's not going to happen. The other thing I'd like to remind you about, as the planning board, you're well aware of the impact of flood zones on the town. So if you consider, in reality, most of the properties south of Route 28 are currently in either an A or V zone. Building an accessory apartment there is really difficult, okay, with the substantial improvement law, with the lateral addition components, with the fact that areas like down behind the Moose Lodge, some of those houses have to come up 9, 10, 11 feet. You can't build an affordable apartment down there, nor does it make sense to allow someone to finish a basement down there. That's hundreds and hundreds of units that eventually will come off the housing market, will come off the inventory because they can't be improved beyond what they are today without a massive several $100,000 or multi-million-dollar improvement because of the flood zone condition. The walls are closing in on us, and the ability to create a flexible, non-income restricted bylaw that's sensible and allows occupancy at all levels of the income stream is really important. The other thing I learned in my public education at DY, right, go Dolphins, was that you shouldn't create laws you cannot enforce. So everybody says, hey, geez, if we create an accessible apartment, we're going to make you sign a piece of paper that says you won't rent it week to week in the summertime. Okay. And we're going to say, I'm going to swear that I'm going to rent it for not more than 90 days. Okay. Right? If eventually you're going to get caught, eventually somebody's going to throw a bunch of fines around, that sort of thing. How do you enforce it? Use the tax structure in the town to do that. You've got statutory lien rights in the tax laws. If I wanted to build an apartment on my property, indeed restrict it to affordability guidelines, right, area median income, then give me a tax incentive to do that. If I don't, let me pay the going rate in taxes. If there's a discrepancy in how I use that property and you guys have the means to enforce it, you watch Airbnb, you watch WeNeedAVacation.com and find out we're renting it during the week, then, and I'm on the affordable restriction list, raise my taxes. You have the right to do it. You should do it. And if people fail to comply, you can go in and lien the property. It's very simple. The way to do this is very clear. You've just got to allow some flexibility, and I commend you for taking on this effort because it's really big. I will tell you anecdotally, the city of Los Angeles just did this. There's some great studies out there. They had some pseudo-restrictive affordable ADU bylaws. There were a few hundred units the first couple of years they brought it on. Last year they changed it to a non-income restricted component. 4,900 units, permits were issued last year, in 1 year, okay? So it works, and I hope this goes well. Thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing one, hearing none, seeing none. Okay. Let's tackle this. We have some comments we can mull over. Let's tackle this with the highlighted portions first that Kathy has brought to the table, following up on what we did last week, and we will get back to the comments after that. First page looks like we're back to minimum lot size, which to me is the big bugaboo. Mr. Barron, you want to take a crack at? Do you think that's too high, too low?
Well, looking at the other examples in the other communities, 10,000 doesn't seem to be an issue elsewhere.
and we should probably relax that.
Leave it as 10,000?
Relax it.
Go smaller?
Meaning less, meaning more.
Relax means to tighten. So
All right.
What size would you be
Wait, yeah,
interested in?
since on this one, size does matter, there we go.
I'm not gonna pull a lottery number for size, but in excess of 10,000.
Okay, all right, so we're climbing, okay. That's what seems to be the flavor so far. Joe, do you have a figure in mind, or just do you want to stay on the larger than 10,000?
I'll stay on larger than 10, because I think there'll be other governors that will restrict the size of whatever is built, mostly septic.
I was about to say,
Title V
yeah.
is going to be the governor there, not lot size. But I do think I think there is some merit in thinking, and I don't want to necessarily raise this now, but I will, in thinking about different lot sizes, if we're going to stick with affordable and we're going to stick with family, did we want to consider different lot sizes for different types of ADUs?
Well, I know what I'll say, but I'll,
I just would
The
caution, 'cause
standard is better,
my only concern is I think a lot of people start with a family-related, and then they might want to move over to
Yeah.
an affordable, and if that would just be a
It'd be
little
constrained.
confusing as to, it probably would require the ZBA to give some type of relief to that.
If I may, I'd just like to also comment on the spreadsheet.
Good job.
And I will speak with Kyle, who did a great job in pulling this together. It was a great piece of information for us to have. There are a couple of questions I have specifically about lot size, in particular, where it says none. I believe all of the nones are whatever their minimum required lot size is. It's not none. So we don't want to, if this becomes part of the public record, it is not zero.
Okay, good
Yeah.
point.
It is the minimum required lot size. So
point.
I would suggest that maybe we add that language to that. And the only other comment that I'll give to Kyle is that Sandwich actually has two kinds of affordable dwelling units. The one he listed, the by right one, he has that all correct. However, they do have one that's a special permit, that is not income restricted, that's not affordable, that requires the standard minimum required lot size of 40,000, but it requires a special permit. So they do have two kinds of accessory dwelling units. So just a couple of minor edits to the chart. Overall, he did a great job. It was very helpful.
I think Brewster also has two separate kinds. Technically, they have one that's in a commercial.
Commercial, that's
Right.
correct, yeah.
I really think that we should be having a larger lot size.
good.
I think we should be 15,000 and
Okay.
above.
I mean, it's all going to come down to septic, as we all know, but
Yeah.
you got to have some sort of starting base, but 15 is a number we can look at.
Well, I mean, you talk about septic, but, we will eventually have sewers here.
That's one thing Mr. Tague forgot to say. I was about to congratulate. I think he's part of Ed's family, is he not? Isn't that Ed's family? Ed Tague, former representative for the area decades ago? No? I'm looking at the building inspector. You're not sure. I think it's Ed's son. Yeah, when you reference Los Angeles and 4,900 additions in 1 year, they have a sewer system, which really takes up a lot of the slack we have to do here. But that was not stated. Sir?
I really don't know if we have to have a minimum lot size, because there's going to be dimensional and septic requirements that are going to dictate what you can do in your property anyway.
So you're going to leave it up to setbacks,
Yeah.
buffers, sidelines, and then septic. Okay, that's possible, okay.
You're suggesting it just be silent?
Yeah.
Just be silent on it?
Okay.
'Cause I think if you're going to do something along those lines, then the accessory dwelling. We have so many non-conforming lots with non-conforming structures on them that they can't, if they want to build a little addition, it might be in the setback, but if you're saying there's no limitation on minimum size, then you'd want to say anything new it's either within the existing structure itself or anything new has to meet all of the setbacks and all of the dimensional criteria. So I think if you're going to go that way, you have to be very clear, and that gives people somewhat less flexibility, I think, in where they want. Now, if they have like a little place where they want to be in a side yard setback or something, they can ask some relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals for that. I think with no minimum lot size, you'd have to be much stricter with that, or I would recommend that you be more strict with that. I think the idea is to kind of keep it less strict.
Question for Kathy. Don't we have smaller, older, non-conforming lots that have 6-foot side setbacks?
Some of them have it, meaning they probably have a structure right now that might be that, but if you have a vacant lot right now, you can go with the original setbacks at the time the lot was created. But
Right.
if you've already developed it, then you have to meet the current bylaw.
Right. So I would say, I would go along with, some of my colleagues here, that I would think that at least a 15,000 square foot minimum. And if you look at the amount of units currently in Yarmouth for the 10,000 square foot units, it's getting up there, and we would just be adding to it. But again, it's a septic issue as well.
Quickly, I would definitely go larger than 10,000. I don't mind removing all the income guidelines at all. I think being a landlord and living in a structure next to another structure, you're going to be darn sure, A, you're getting paid, and B, it's fair, and C, that the person is responsible. So I think Americans tend to do the right thing when you allow the playing field to be level. But I would like to see some kind of guidelines on size. We all know that 10,000 square feet is the size of a new building in Yarmouth because of the commission. Everybody can see that in their mind's eye. And to have a piece of land that's 10,000 square feet as large as the existing Walmart that was just built, and have two structures within that size is pretty small. I heard it, Brett. Go
I
ahead.
guess the only thing I would comment on is, I know that when we originally started talking about this back in September, we were talking about baby steps and moving forward. We all knew from the accessory dwelling unit model bylaw that everybody, there's a group of people, I shouldn't say everybody, there's a group of people, similar to some of the people that you heard today, who wanted it to be by right. I think we had gone down, well, let's take what we have and expand it a little bit, make it less restrictive. If we want to start talking about getting rid of the affordability and getting rid of the family-related, I don't think we would be able to have that done for annual town meeting. The reason I say that is we already want to get some input from the Community Housing Committee and then get more input from the Affordable Housing Trust, and then vet that through the more of the public, people who would live in the neighborhoods, who might be living next to these facilities. I think a lot of the other accessory dwelling, and I wish they were still here, some of the other accessory dwelling units bylaws that are out there really have a much higher minimum. Either you meet the minimum current lot size, which is totally different than what we have here in Yarmouth. In order to move forward. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if we're talking about removing some of these restrictions or going a completely more aggressive way, that's fine, but I just don't think that that's something that we can get done for annual town meeting. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, it's fine. My other comment was going to be, can we get this through town meeting? You need 67% of the
Yeah, I
votes.
mean,
And the last thing is just comes down to, the one thing Mr. Tague did say, and I think someone else said it here, enforceability.
True.
Don't have enough bodies. So the easier and the more cut and dry you make something, it's just if you follow this, you get it. If you don't, you go to the ZBA, and you don't need this yin and yang effect of being enforced every 3.5 weeks.
I think the comment he made was one, we would be blind to the occupant. We would set rules and regulations with regard to the building and the size of the lot on which that building or room might exist, but that we would be blind to whoever the occupant is.
It would just need to be year-round, otherwise why are we creating it? Right? The whole idea of this bylaw is a
yeah.
year-round affordable
Exactly.
housing.
Right. And I can appreciate I mean, he did suggest the owner-occupied, but we're running it a little bit at cross purposes when you have a campaign out there offering $1,000 to any homeowner on Cape Cod to rent their house if they're not here. I mean, the HAC,
Oh, right.
the same group, is offering this $1,000 bonus for anyone who has a home on Cape Cod who doesn't live here to rent it out.
Year-round.
Year-round, yeah, it is a year-round. It is a year-round. So it would not be owner-occupied.
But you
and-
can, anybody can rent their house out.
Yes, right now they can, if they follow all the permitting and Board of Health and everything else. Which goes to one of the other issues I guess we'll get to, is whether or not we want to require it to be, one of the buildings to be owner-occupied. But we should, I'm sorry, I
Yeah, we're
didn't mean to
just-
drift off on that. We need to, I guess,
I just think, should we,
go on lot size, and
do you want to settle on 15,000 square feet?
that's fine with me.
Fine with me.
You want it, you don't want any, that's
Don't
right.
want any, but if that's the majority, I'll go with the majority.
Can I direct a question through you to Mark?
Sure. Well, you're the chairman. You can ask
Well, I just want to make sure, I'm afraid of you, you're sitting up here right now, so that's why.
See?
Usually you're
Way to
far
go,
enough
girl.
away, you know?
smack you today.
Mark, I'm going to ask you to step up, I'm sorry. 15,000 square feet, you can appreciate the lot size and figure the lot size in your head faster than I can. Make more sense for Yarmouth to look at 15,000 square feet than 10, in your own opinion, and just your opinion yourself, not speaking as an official for Yarmouth?
I'm not allowed to have an opinion, is my first response to that. I'm here to
Okay.
enforce a bylaw that's written and placed on my desk.
Okay.
The density issue, the rental issue, there are neighborhoods that are more dense than others. There are rentals that I deal with on a daily basis that are just terrible to deal with. Not all of them are bad. Not all people are bad. The majority of people are good. Whatever you write, people are going to find a way around it. I do want to bring up, not all people will, but some people will, just because that's human nature. They just don't want to abide, and they're just going to do what they want. The comment about the 6-foot setbacks and the pre-existing nonconformity, if somebody wanted to add an addition to their house that was 6 feet from the property line, for instance, and it's at a 15-foot setback, if they wanted to maintain that 6-foot line and do an addition, they could maintain the 6-foot line.
Yeah.
So they could still create a more non-conforming structure as long as they don't get any closer.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if they increase the height, then it's a Board of Appeals special permit, but if they maintain the same height, they can continue that line. It's very complex. The whole zoning bylaw is just charming, but
You know, I've read a lot of the information that came forward from HAC and from the trust and also CPC committee. And I think that what we were working on and what we were coming to a point of making a decision relative to the two categories, the affordable, and with the affordable dropping the affordable housing restriction, I think that's going to bring more people on board. And for the family-related, allowing people beyond the family, caregiver, close personal friend, you name it, but just give a vehicle for more opportunities for the family-related. Those two issues, I think, would probably generate more units. But one thing I'd like to say and follow up with what Mark just said, I've got some experience with rentals. And I don't think all landlords have any idea, or homeowners, I should say, what it takes to be a landlord, or some of the people that you have to deal with. Now, if you place some of these circumstances in a residential neighborhood, I think you better make sure that you go through a good checking system relative to the tenant that you're going to put in there. But the bottom line is, it's not a perfect world. And some of the issues that arise, I think people really don't have any idea of what could happen. You see? Go ahead.
In the zoning bylaw, the definition of a single-family dwelling is, so right now, people have the ability to rent their house, whether they live there or not. They get a rental certificate from the Board of Health, and they can rent their house out. That's not an issue. The definition of a single-family dwelling in the zoning bylaw, as it's written today, a structure containing one dwelling unit with not more than 3 lodgers or boarders. So you can rent out, if you have a 3-bedroom house and you need to get some more income, you can have a couple of roommates. Solves part of the housing issue. I don't think that people understand that the way that this is read.
I think that Kathy Bailey and Mary Wagon have been talking about that with the seniors at the senior center about maybe having the Affordable Housing Trust have some type of program where they can vet people and match people up with roommates. Because I think that's probably the biggest thing that people are, unless you know someone and you're like, come live with me and that type of thing. If you're looking for someone, having somebody else doing the vetting and the matching and personality kind of matching would be very, very helpful.
Okay, I think we've tackled that. Let's move on to your next highlighted line.
I think that's just to kind
fine.
of address
Yep.
Joanne's issue there, just saying not just the main building, but the detached.
Second page.
This is something, I think from the last meeting, that everyone had agreed on 50% of the structure of the habitable floor area. I did talk a little bit, or 800 feet, whichever's lesser. I did talk a little bit with Mary Wagon about whether we should have a minimum in there, and she noted a minimum of 400 square feet. I don't know whether you guys are interested in that at all, and that's why it's in here highlighted. I believe the only other place that has that is Mashpee, and Mary is the chairman of the Mashpee Planning Board. So. And the last thing is, maybe, I don't know whether we need to define in more detail habitable floor area. I'm looking at Mark. I don't know if we need to define more detail what we mean by habitable floor area.
Well, it doesn't include the deck and the garage and things like that, right?
In the Brewster bylaw, they just said it is habitable area shall be measured according to the definition of Massachusetts State Building Code, and unenclosed additions constructed to serve the ADU, such as entry, secondary egress, or exterior stairs, shall not be included in the maximum habitable area of the ADU. Mark's shaking his head, no, we don't.
Not an issue.
Okay.
So the question here is, do we want a minimum? I'm going to look to anybody with a housing assistant corp. So Norm, you work with housing a lot. Do you think board would like a minimum?
Yeah, I think we ought to have a minimum size, or, but I don't know if we want to define it by square footage or percentage.
No smaller than,
No smaller than, but I don't have a problem with the 400 square feet.
The way this is read is you're going to fit somewhere between 400 and 800, depending on the size of your main dwelling.
So 400 would be a tight studio.
Yeah.
It's approximately 150 feet larger than a hotel room.
Yeah.
I think when we were looking at the extended stay hotel provisions, and that's
Right.
really just an efficiency, which is
Right.
kind of the same thing, that was a minimum of 300 square feet, just to put that in perspective, if you've ever stayed in one of those extended stay hotels.
okay. Anybody else want to pipe in?
I'm okay with the 400.
On the other hand, the space has got to be something that someone can rent, so whoever's going
Your mother
to do this and put their money on the line is going to want to build something that is rentable, and I don't know if 400 square feet is, a good number or not.
Affordable. Think affordable. You pay by the square foot.
if you're by yourself and it's just you, finding something that's affordable for a single person is hard.
It's usable space, 400 usable
Right, and if
space.
you're by yourself and you're not trying to have a separate bedroom per se, and it's just one, maybe one large efficiency studio or something. Sounds heavenly to me, actually, 400 square feet all to myself. Whoops, did I say that out loud?
Sir, do you? No, okay.
Carry on.
All right,
Carry on.
all right. All right, so it looks like Mary Wagon got a thing from Mashpee. I'm sure we can defend that and why. I'm sure a picture.
It was also part of the town's housing standards.
Yeah.
404, if you're creating a new unit in 404, it's 400 square feet for section. So I think that's kind of where we kind
Okay.
of came up with the 400.
I think it's an easy picture to put up on the screen at town meeting as well. Looking just for yellow highlights. Bottom of page 5 of 6. No, we're just deleting amnesty.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I'm just saying when we deleted it, so it would be a case of delete and replace with amnesty deleted.
And last page.
Yeah, then now that we moved a little further along, I took a look at some other sections that might need to be changed and looked at the different definitions. And since we're not really having that affordable deed restriction anymore, we're changing the maximum allowable rent for affordable accessory apartments shall be per section 407.
Okay. All right.
So if everyone's okay with that, one of the other things, I think we need to start vetting it through other committees. I think Mary's trying to get a meeting with the housing, or the Community Housing Committee, I believe for the 10th. And she's also working on a meeting for the Affordable Housing Trust. I think it was on the 17th or the 18th, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was going to go to those meetings. Each one of those committees has a representative of the planning board and just take out the highlights and present this and explain what we're hoping to do and garner some additional input. I think the emphasis is baby steps, let's move forward. And I don't think we want to be creating an extensive number of additional dwelling units when we're so dense already. We have a nitrogen loading issue problem. We have a very large zone 2 that we need to take into consideration. But I think this is a very, very good step to take.
I think it is too. Yeah, it is the 18th at 4 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
The,
When are the meetings again?
geez, the 10th and the 18th.
I think Mary was confirming, but I can
This is
send
the
out something.
Housing Trust.
The Community Housing Committee's meeting on the 10th. I'm not sure what time, 5?
Yeah, I don't have that from her yet.
They
so
usually meet at
I can't-
5.
I can't confirm it, but I'll take your word for it.
And then Housing Trust is meeting when? What time did you say?
Tuesday, 4 o'clock on the 18th.
Okay. I can send that around to you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but because I've been out of it, I haven't caught any
Okay.
announcement of the meeting from
So I'll just
from
provide
Mary.
a little summary memo with this attached and go to those meetings and explain and get input and bring it back to you guys.
That'd be great. Before I get to signage, Mary, are you here to speak on signage? Yes? Okay, so I'm going to have you speak on signage before we go into this. Thanks, Mark.
Good evening. Mary Zilbun with the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce. Actually, Mark and I were just talking about the draft, so we're on page 7 now.
Okay.
And so this is just questions, just for clarity.
You want to pull the mic a little closer? Gee, I apologize. Just,
No, that's okay.
there you go.
So under the electronic messaging centers,
Yep.
I'm actually just here just to confirm on number 2, because I think some of you know that myself and Karen Green are going before the ZBA on the 13th to try to get our electronic messaging board approved. I just want to make sure, are there any restrictions on the color of the text for the board? Because I see on the first one that we're white, and I understand that. For the date and temperature, but will our characters be restricted to a color as well?
It doesn't say any restriction on
I know, that's
colors.
why I'm
Would
asking,
you like
though.
to have it restricted?
No.
Would you like it clarified that there's no color restriction?
I would.
Well, if it's
So
Okay. If it's not in there, it doesn't, you can't enforce it, so.
I'm just looking for clarity, because
Okay.
I don't want anyone to come back after we do the installation.
Oh, we wouldn't do that.
Oh,
I think the DUI one's always red.
it's red.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
So until we actually have the board installed, I mean, our thought was that it was going to be blue, so it's soft, especially for nighttime. But until you actually see it,
Yeah.
you can't be sure. So that's why I just wanted to be very cautious that if there was a restriction, to have that conversation now. What was there, any other things that we were? Oh, yes. So the size, just again, clarity. For the sign that we are currently proposing to install, it has 32 square feet. But Kathy, I just want to confirm, this is the LED portion only,
Right,
correct?
This is the maximum, and this is, kind of how Mark interprets it, and we can maybe make it clear. The maximum area of the electronic message is 28 square feet
Right.
for the community information board. And when you go to the community information board, it says it can be up to 32 square feet. This was just to allow a little bit at the top to say community information board that wasn't going to be part of the LED.
So very similar to what we have now with the
Yeah, it looks
rotary
nice.
emblem.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
So that's the way I interpret it, and if he's the man that matters.
That's why I was talking to him before.
It says he doesn't have an opinion, but he does.
On the color of the lettering or numbering, that was a comment that we had talked about the gas station.
Gas
And it was,
stations, yeah.
and
Correct.
I think our agreement was that we stay with only a white.
Yes, right now.
So we're looking at two different things then. Community boards now are going to be able to have colors, and gas stations only going to be able to have one color,
Correct.
white.
And same with the time and temperature, that's just to be white. That's a community information board, I think it's meant, it's for the community, it's not for an individual business.
Well, the bylaw only allows for 2 community information boards in the town anyway, so it's not going to be widespread. You're going to have 2, and that's it. And there's
Yeah,
one at
but
DY already.
we've got two things that are going to be displayed, and we got different color codes for each one. That's the only thing I see.
It's not unusual.
Okay. It could be uniform or not. I agree.
And then could you just explain, because I was just trying to understand 303 point, I guess it would be 3.4 now, the moving parts section?
Okay, well, the sign can't move. You're going to have it on like DYs, it doesn't move around their property.
Oh, meaning
No,
that
this is like, it's not flashing.
Oh, I
The
didn't
electronic
know that.
message can change as needed to provide updated information.
Okay, but
These are
DYs
typically
moves,
Oh.
doesn't it?
It can.
Right, I've seen it
Well,
moving.
DYs moves, yes, it goes, winner of.
It's a
blood.
ribbon.
Yeah.
Scrolls.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's.
I did not know
Yeah, I
that.
read that differently, too. I read that as the sign itself.
So I would encourage that we do have that, because I can we struggle every single week on our board. There's just not enough space to have everything stationary. It would be great that it be able to change out.
But
So
you can change it out, but you're saying,
moving.
The number of characters they want
I
to
know,
carry.
I'm just wondering how distracting that is.
But it does at a DY. And
Didn't know. it
at our intersection, people are stopped at the light. So they would have the option, they would see more information going across.
So you.
It's not unusual, even, you could go through a work zone where a street's going to be closed. They can only fit so many characters. Work zone, September, blah-de-blah through, flips, hours of work will be, so, there's a,
That's a screen change.
it's a screen change, but this is similar. I mean,
Right.
it's just a message that all the characters can't fit
She's
on a
describing a
screen.
scrolling message at the high school, and what you're talking about is a complete screen change.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference.
Yeah, we won't, I
there
mean,
is.
our board will have the ability to do like full characters if we wanted it to, but that's not our intention. Ours is just information, and there may be times where we need the information to scroll. Sometimes we can't even get the name of the organization or the event, without, on one line. So we would have to have it scrolling. So I think I would support, no flashing, no intermittent light, but to take the motion out of that, we wouldn't be able to scroll.
Well, maybe I'm reading this differently, because to me, movement
Right.
movement or moving parts would be
Allowed.
something attached to the sign, which would be like a flag waving or yeah. But the idea of a scroll
Due to flashing.
is just a different version of the actual sign itself.
Clarity.
I think your issue isn't 303.3.4, because it says, except for portions of the sign which include the electronic messaging center. I think what you want is some relief given up at the community information boards, because that says they shall be stagnant messages, and then under each one, it tells you how you can change it. So I think the word stagnant, and then whether we want to add scrolling are the issues.
Static electron, not stagnant, okay.
Did I say stagnant?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Static. I'm looking, I don't see stagnant. I'm like, I even put on my glasses
My
going.
brain is
I know my eyes are
stagnant.
going. I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
Static.
the language under Community Information Board, the last sentence, the electronic message can change as needed to provide updated information. There's your scrolling
You could just say
capability right there.
including scrolling and just,
Yeah, there it is right
That
there.
makes them comfortable, I'd put it in there.
Yeah,
Including scrolling, yeah.
yeah.
That's all I have.
And display, so we're taking out static, possibly?
I think the static, I want everybody else to be static. So maybe we say the electronic messages shall, for the other ones, shall
So
be
just,
static
right,
except
community.
change to,
Community information scrolling,
Right.
got it. Okay. All right, we'll hash it out and talk about it.
Okay, thank you. Do you really want me to bring that up? Okay, thank you.
Mark, do you have anything to add before we start talking as a board on this? No? Okay. Mr. Barron, I'm going to go to you first, not because you're the end, but you've dealt with this a little bit on the ZBA. Is there anything you'd like to add besides color?
That seems to be the only issue right now.
Okay, no,
In-
color's
in my-
fine. I
in
just
my-
didn't
in
know
my
if there's
head.
something you wanted to get there on static or
No,
stagnant or
the
scroll.
idea of restricting only to one color, it shouldn't be something that should be able to be changed from white to red to blue to green, that kind of thing. A static color, sure, but to say that it can be only white or only red or only, in other words, I agree that the idea should not be to be flashing all kinds of different colors, but to say to the gas station owner, you can only use white lettering. It may be preferable that he has red lettering, but a single letter, a single color makes some sense, but leaves that to the builder of the sign or the owner of the sign.
I think it's what you guys want Route 28 to look like.
Yep.
We're already giving them a big give with an LED light, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And so I think if, a lot of times with places where you see it as the green for the diesel and the red for the regular are more strips type of developments, and I think we're trying to get a little bit away from that on Route 28. Totally up to the board on what you guys want to do, but that's why the white was put in originally.
Okay. Joe?
You know, I think that the zoning regulations on signs are really important. And obviously, the volume that it takes up in our zoning bylaws is significant. its weight, therefore it seems to be a bit larger than life. I think at a gas station, I'm not going to notice whether it's red, green, blue, or white. And I don't think anyone else will either. We're restricting the size. And to the degree that we can allow a merchant to have as much flexibility to sell his or her product, I think we should encourage that.
So you don't care what color they are,
No,
but pick one color and stay with it?
no, any color. I say we should be blind to color.
Okay, all right.
Why is that my favorite?
No,
word?
that's fair. Okay.
I have no preference on color. Let me put it that way. I have no preference on color.
Lee?
Yeah, I think what's important is we don't want 28 to look like a circus. And, yeah, I've lived in communities or drove through communities where there's so many signs, it just, it's like, after a while, you can't even look at anything. You can't, how do you focus on driving down the road when you got all these signs? You can't see it. To have something like neon and flashing, I mean, that, back to the 40s, 50s and 60s, and they did that. But today, you want it to be, you want the aesthetics as you're driving through to make you feel, this is a nice place. And to me, okay, you need signs because the commercial people need signs, but not to the extent that, everything's a sign. So I think, from my perspective, I'd rather see just plain white or just something simple, that it's not flashing, it's not, it just gives you the message, that's it. And limit the size of it, too.
Well, the size is already in there, so we got
Yeah.
that. Okay. Norm, you have anything to add?
I don't have a color preference, I just would like to see, make sure that, if there's multiple signs, like gas prices, regular, and that they're all the same color,
So a single color.
single color. But I don't have a preference for color. I've seen red and I've seen white for gas price at stations around, both. And both of them work fine.
Tom?
I agree. I think the color should be open and not restricted, although I am concerned about the vision that we're all hoping to achieve on 28. With the village centers and everything else that we've pushed for in the past, I have no problem with the sign that the chamber is looking for relative to a moving electronic messaging sign. I would leave the color open to them. Mary mentioned blue, and then I wasn't sure if she got into another color or not, but that would be their charge.
I'm trying to
What about the
wheel
gas station? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to wheel everybody in. We want to stay with one color, except for Joe, who had no color. I'm not picking on Joe, I'm just trying to wheedle this down, because we also have to
I
enforce.
really don't have a preference.
We have to enforce this. I wish Mary was still here. I'd like to make the whole town just white or just blue or whatever, and have DY sign be pre-existing non-conforming if in fact this goes through. Can we settle on just one color?
You can just limit,
Everything to just white, or everything just blue, or everything just red? I would just like to have, I sort of agree with Mr. B. I'd like to have, just when you come into Yarmouth, you have the right to have an LED. It's just gonna be white or blue or green, and there you go. It's simple when you drive by, you can see the sign, done.
I think a community information board's a little bit different, and I think we should allow more flexibility for that. For the gas station, if you want to limit it to just say, one color, just leave it to them, or be silent on it, and you'll probably end up with red and green.
But the community board gets to scroll.
Community board gets to scroll.
Agreed, so they are, it's sort of like when the sign people got in my face a little while at Stop and Shop, I was like, guys, you can use your own colors now. Dunkin' Donuts can now put up its own colors. If you're in a plaza, you don't have to be just black and white with the rest of the plaza. You gotta get out of jail free card. If we're giving them an LED, shouldn't the whole town be uniform a little bit? Or do you think?
I think community information board's different. It's meant for the community. It's providing information to the community. It's not trying to sell a product for one particular location. It's trying to give you information about what's going on in your community, pertinent information,
We're only
emergency
gonna allow
information.
2 in the community.
We only allow 2 in the community. I view it differently.
I guess, I'm not gonna make it stand in the line on that. Do you guys wanna allow the colors of gas stations to be any color, or do you wanna stay with white? Let's just keep it simple as that.
Personally, I would prefer white.
I prefer white.
White's fine.
Sounds good.
It's fine.
Most of them in town now are really, when the manual signs are white on black.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah,
Anyway,
I was trying to think of something
This would be the
besides DUI.
opposite.
Yeah.
You know, you just, I'm taking a ride down 28, and there are maybe 5 banks that might have the time and date. There are at most 6 gas stations.
We have like 12 gas
there
stations in
12?
town. Yes. There's more than you think.
Yeah,
Oh, the
there are.
ones over by, as you get closer to Hyannis.
Speedways at both ends.
We've
Yeah,
lost a lot
I
of
missed
those.
I missed the one
And
at,
one in Yarmouthport I always forget about.
yeah.
You have, you
No,
know,
I was
3 on
thinking
Station.
28, though.
Station Ave, 2.
Station Ave's
I mean,
got a cluster of them.
Yeah, there's 3 on
Absolutely.
Station Ave, yeah.
Yeah.
I counted them up the other
Station Ave would be more
day.
of concern to me.
The one in Yarmouth Port can't have a sign because it's Old Kings
Oh,
Highway.
Right. Yeah, they'll never get this, so they don't apply. But I think when you're coming in, you know, from Route 8, you know, exit 8,
Yeah,
down Station Avenue, that's your first
Station, yeah.
impression, yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with white.
So I'll add scrolling for the community information, and then
Take out the word static.
take it-
Keep static in, sorry.
I think I'll take it out of the beginning where it applies to all of the electronic messaging boards and put it specifically underneath the date and time. Electronic messages shall be static except can change as needed to know accurate time. I just want them to know that I don't want it flashing.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we've come a long way in the past 20 years on signs. We still get pushback. Entertainment.
I don't think you guys talked about it that much at the November 7th meeting. This is really just adding a note to the use table for theatrical productions, including bands, orchestras, and entertainers in the B1 and B2 zoning districts that basically would allow those things if accessory to an allowed or otherwise permitted use and an entertainment license has been issued by the Board of Selectmen through application to the Town Administrator's Office. This is just taking the ZBA out of the picture for outdoor entertainment and that type of thing.
In business zone, not residential.
Obviously, if it's not accessory and that's the main thing you're doing, it doesn't apply. But this is really meant to be. The other thing that's added down at the bottom, we've been working with, and Tom, feel free to jump in here. We've been working with the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee to come up with a policy for use of the former drive-in site, an interim policy, kind of based the way it looks right now, and would need to be edited eventually as more improvements get made. But right now, in our temporary outdoor recreation, we have a limit of no longer than 9 consecutive days. There's been some suggestion of somebody interested in maybe putting up an ice skating rink there for extended period of time, which sounds like a great idea. But technically, the way it's written right now, they'd have to go to the ZBA, get a special permit to do it, and they wouldn't qualify under this temporary outdoor recreation. So when we discussed it with the DISAC, when was that, Monday? Now the week's flown. They recommended, would be supportive of just either eliminating the 9-day restriction and/or giving the Board of Selectmen the ability to extend it. The way it's written right now is it says the 9 days unless expressly allowed through the use of town-owned property process. So that leaves it up to the Board of Selectmen. So you can either take it out or kind of leave it like this, that gives flexibility to the Board of Selectmen.
The thought occurs to me with the drive-in site, and Tom, you may you may agree or disagree with me, but the same concept of a community information board, if that site is going to, if the Lot 2 portion of the drive-in site is going to be used for different events, I'm sure sooner or later, there's going to be a need for some sort of information board. What are the upcoming events on this site?
As an LED, it better be white.
Okay, you see what I'm getting at. The idea is if we're going to promote that site and its activities and its usage, and some information board is going to be needed sooner or later. Some signage, something, and maybe that's where we have a third community information board for
Well,
the community.
The intent of interim use is to feel out and see what we can attract. We're not sure that it's going to be an end result. It may perhaps, it may change
Yeah.
after a period of time. That's why we're reluctant to spend a lot of money there for resources and utilities unless we get someone with a track record to come in and make it a very profitable situation. But based on the event planners that we talked to, and they reference to Marshfield Fair, and some of the things that they have to go through to make these events happen is costly. So we're in the process of trying to determine rules and regulations, and is the use fee going to be practical relative to trying to attract tourism and so forth, and the benefits for the town, restaurants, and what have you. But the end result may be a building there. It may be some kind of a shell. It may be some kind of a large gazebo.
Yeah.
So it's just a trial and it's
I agree.
It's interim.
In the interim period, I could envision one of these rental signs that's wheeled up to the entrance and
Sure.
Upcoming event.
Yeah.
But I'm looking beyond that to where it might be a more permanent kind of location and venue.
Sure.
And then we might be in that permanent category.
Mm-hmm.
In the interim, yeah, things have to be fluid, have to be able to be adjusted.
Fall right into place.
Yeah, but on the long term, if this interim activity becomes more and more attractive and more popular, it'll be the quicker that a permanent idea will emerge, I'm sure.
Okay.
So 9 days with the caveat? Take out 9 days? What's the scoop?
Personally, I'd take out the 9 days, but
I don't,
Okay with that?
I don't have any problem with that.
What's the magic in 9 days?
It was in there originally for temporary outdoor recreation. I think the idea was
2 weeks.
it would allow, right,
2
exactly.
weekends.
It would allow 2 weekends.
And a Monday through Friday.
5 days and 4.
And then a setup and a takedown kind of day. I think that was the thinking. But these are things that are only permitted for town-owned land, and it has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen anyway, so let them
Yeah.
decide what they want.
Exactly, that's the whole point.
Amen.
So we'll take out.
Take it out.
Take the
we'll
9 days
what's in
out.
yellow
Yep.
altogether and edit the temporary outdoor recreation definition.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
We call these people die suck, right?
We do.
All right.
We always emphasize suck.
Die suck, okay. 12 years, we never got a euphemism, and there we go. All right.
Oh, we are looking at potentially having some type of contest to name the future
Oh,
park.
yeah, that's very true.
So, stay tuned. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but if you think of any great ideas.
Bob Dubois.
Start thinking. Yeah, Bob Dubois probably has a good idea.
There we go.
Something to think about.
All right. Use regulations. I turned to the page of building height. I don't think
Yeah,
there's a lot
this
for
is-
stormwater.
Nope, this is the building height in the VCOD for the ancillary features. This is the language for that. I think, so this allows things like chimneys, spires, antennas, impediments, cornices, mechanical equipment, and screening for mechanical equipment, railings, and other similar structures not intended for human occupancy to be exempt from the building height, except that they can't be any higher than 4 feet above the maximum building height allowed. Right now, in the general bylaw, in height, it excludes a lot of these things in the height. I think when we had discussed it, the VC2 being in the residential zoning district, that this might make some sense to include it. It's up to you guys whether you want to or not. A developer had asked a specific question as to why we hadn't included the same exemption in the VCOD to the height that we had included in the main portion of the zoning bylaw. And I'm like, well, I think it probably was more of an oversight than necessarily a conscious decision at the time.
Well, I think it's a definition that helps Mark to, do this.
Did we do an exemption like this for Davenport down on South Shore Drive and the HMOD 2? Didn't they have a structures above the usable building height? Could have sworn Paul Rummel was showing us something that they need some extra flexibility to put in the HVAC on
Yeah.
top of this. And
They have to start with base flood elevation.
yeah, no, I remember.
That's HMOD 2.
That's why I said HMOD 2.
Yeah,
I just
so
thought we had different
they-
stuff on that.
Which would mean that some of those buildings would be 55, 58 feet high.
They still had some, I think this is a great idea. I just remember
Yeah.
Paul going through, guys, we need some flexibility here because we have no place to put
It was
this."
48 plus,
Right,
2 foot above the
Right.
horizontal member,
right.
base flood elevation.
I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but this is the first time you've actually seen the written language and how it
Yep.
would be edited in the zoning bylaw.
I think this could pass fairly easily at town
Yep.
meeting. I really do. I don't see anybody having a problem with that. Miscellaneous amendments.
Yeah, I've worked up something on the stormwater, but I gotta run it by the stormwater consultant. It's not much, we're just adding a reference, so.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Mark to come up to the mic and talk about his concerns about boat storage. And there's some potential requested language change that he had.
Did everybody get a copy?
This late in the
Yes.
game, huh? Okay.
Well, in all fairness, he mentions it to me every year, and we
Yeah, this is an annual event. I'm finally getting before you to present it. How's that?
I would like to say it's about time.
Oh, well, what started this whole thing is we get a lot of complaints about people in their boats, and it's not generally that people really care what it looks like. They don't like that person, and they know that it exists. So, and it's typical. So what prompted this memo last week was one person who refused to respond to me with multiple letters finally received his $100 ticket to get his attention, which it did. He promptly moved his boat, but presented me a list of 16 additional properties that were in violation in his opinion, and now I have to research those 16 additional properties. So for what it's worth, for somebody to have a boat on a trailer, in a lot of cases, they have circular driveways, and the guy really isn't that, one guy, I can't back my boat up, I have a hard time doing it, so it's easier for me to just drive around. For him to put it behind the front line of the house, he would have to back it in someplace, which was his lawn, his manicured lawn. He didn't want to do that, so the language, the only difference in the language is the exception, which I'm open to. This is just suggested language. You guys can modify it or not accept it. That's your call to make. But the only comment that Mary Vilbon had was in regards to the paved surface, and she thought maybe we should just name it the driveway.
Mr. Chairman, if I could?
Sure, go ahead.
I would start by saying we all live in a seaside community.
I did.
Which means boating. And I think that it was a long time coming. I used to live over in Parkers River, and myself and some of the neighbors went through the same thing. We had to really, in tight areas, just trying to get beyond the front of the house. But I would say as long as it would stay within the setbacks and not encroach upon the setbacks, wherever the homeowner wanted to put it, I think. Obviously, it wouldn't be in his front yard, but
That's why I
would
said,
say
I
this-
specifically mentioned a paved area, because if you don't tell them, they will put it in their front yard because it's out of their way and they can get in and out of their garage.
Yeah.
So,
behind the front yard setback, Tom, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm concerned about the side and the rear setbacks. They're abutters.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get clear, because a lot of times houses are very close to the road, so you may not be able to put, you'd be lucky if you can get the full boat on your property, not necessarily behind the front yard setback. That's why I was asking that question. So you would want it to be outside of the rear and side yard setback?
Yeah, just so you wouldn't infringe on your abutters.
But if it's in your driveway, it's already,
Well, if it's in your driveway, then obviously it's not. But if you're gonna put it on the side of your house, you know, and it's a two-story boat, it's a flybridge, you know, your neighbor doesn't wanna look at it maybe 15 feet away.
people can do that now?
Yeah.
So that would be, if you add that, then it would be a larger restriction. I think
Oh, really?
what Mark was trying to do was say, you know, recreation vehicles can be parked behind the front line, so if you can get your boat behind the front face of your, you can do that. Or you also have the exception of putting the boat in your driveway if it's a registered boat on a registered trailer and it's on your paved drive, on your short driveway surface.
Does it have to be paved? I mean,
Well, that's why I said maybe just name it driveway. Mary Vilbon had the comment, just name it a
Stone, dust,
driveway. It could be a
gravel,
stone, could be
shells.
shells. You know, it could be, you know, compacted surface, whatever, however you want to word it.
Hardened surface.
You know.
I
Yeah,
mean-
you know, another funny story to share is the RVs. You know, people have RVs, and one person complained about their neighbor's RV, not because it really bothered him, but because it was an ugly RV. It was the dirtiest one in the neighborhood, because when we got there were 11 others that were also in violation, so, including the complainant. So all 11 of them received violation notices, and this is what we deal with day to day. So, you know, some people just can't. You know, they own a small house, they bought a small lot so they could pay lower taxes and not have a huge burden of a giant mortgage, because they like to use their RV and go travel around the country, and, you know, during certain times of the year, they park it in their driveway. And, you know, I'm not suggesting that you guys modify that in any way. It's just certain things that I think that we should think about. You know, people have recreational boats that they like to use on the weekend. They don't want to buy a slip, because slips are very expensive, and there's none really available around. I talked to Wayne Kirker at Hyannis Marina, and he just said there's just really no slips available. So they pay the registration on their trailer. It does say that it has to be a registered boat on a registered trailer. You can't buy a clunker and just park it on your front lawn. You need to, you know, it has to be a boat that you can use. You know, these are things that I think that we should think about, being where we're located. And again, it's your call. You guys can vote on it however you wish, but
Mark, may I ask you a question on, when you say a recreational vehicle, some of these are like mobile homes, or considered mobile camping homes, if you will. There's one down Station Ave just before the lights. I see it seasonally. It may not be there, but right now it happens to be there. I think it's very close to the sideline, but it's
there's no
usually
restriction on that now.
Pardon?
There's no restriction on that right now.
But it's tucked right adjacent to the house, but you say there's no restriction on something like that.
There is not.
Okay, all right.
They probably have tucked it in there, trying to meet the requirement that it needs to be behind their
Yeah.
front face.
And the
so
only
they
real
have so
exception,
much
the only
space.
real exception to that section is not every camper, not every recreational vehicle, it's only boats. And those are the complaints that we get the most, and they're the ones that are most mobile. The people use their boats
Yeah,
more often,
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Just, you know, people they bring their boat out, they wash their boat in their driveway. The neighbors are on the phone or sending me a complaint, so that's the way people are, so I just think
We want
it's
to make
something.
Yarmouth more dense with the
You could take a
All
look
right,
at
let's
it.
add bodies in here. Okay, here we go.
Well,
Rub
yeah,
up against
no
each other
comment.
and activate more people.
All right.
I have one question.
On boats?
Yes.
Okay.
There are boats that are stored for the winter that are towed to the property and set up on blocks or stanchions. And the owner may not have a registered trailer because they're one of the lucky ones who might have a slip. I think restricting it to an unregistered trailer is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I don't see that as a problem at all. The flying bridge boats are the ones that are on the braces, and those, most of the people that have those now are beside their house or behind their house.
Okay. I know of one that is a registered boat. not on a registered trailer, in a driveway, in the front of a house.
I'll be happy to
very
visit that
long-
address.
It's where I live.
Okay.
I was waiting for that. I've got 1,001, 1,002.
Yeah.
No, it isn't where I live, but it is a place where I store the boat. It's a very, now the other thing I think we should think of, this is a very long driveway. You can't see this boat from the street at all because the house is set all the way back.
Love to hear
And
that.
there is no backyard.
Right.
And there is no side yard. There is only a front yard and a very long, windy driveway that happens to have a turnaround. And it is on asphalt, and it's tucked away, covered by vegetation,
Well, if nobody
on
complains.
blocks.
So if a boat is there, no one complains. Is it really a boat?
I don't go looking for problems. How's
I
that?
know.
They
I
generally
just
come to
think
my
that
office.
there are quite a few people who may have the opportunity, because of the layout of their driveway, to not have it on a registered trailer. They don't own a trailer.
Just suggested language. You guys want to modify it. I'm not very proud when it comes to the language of the bylaw. I'm happy to
Well, I
enforce whatever is written.
again, as a boater, I happen to know that this is a common practice. And it's not the ones that have fly bridges. It's just, they don't need a trailer. They don't want a trailer. It's a little 18, 20, 30-foot boat. They park it, they have it set up on blocks. So that would be my recommendation on a change.
I think we need to be careful about, I think it looks different on a trailer versus on blocks. And I think what you're saying is a situation where it's not visible from the public way, right? So maybe that's the language that needs to be discussed versus how it's,
Actually, when it's on blocks, it looks better,
does it?
quite frankly, yeah. It's low, it's very low to the ground, sits there, it looks like a boat. You don't see any wheels, you don't see any long trailer, you don't see any metal. You just see
Okay.
a pretty little boat and
Whatever
shrink
you guys
wrap.
want.
You also see a lot of them on jack stands.
Yeah, jack stands.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's what I really meant to
Yep.
say.
Yeah, there's
Isn't
a few
necessarily,
around.
part of it is on blocks,
Yeah.
and then part would be on a jack stand.
This is a starting point. You guys want to modify it? I'm fine with it. Whatever you say that limits the restriction makes, dealing with it that much easier for.
The idea of a wrapped boat and on jack stands implies that it's temporary storage. It may be seasonal storage or it may be long-term storage, but the idea of a boat on a trailer means that it's going to be mobile and can be movable, either with a good visual aspect to the neighborhood or bad visual aspect to the neighborhood, because it is mobile.
Usually the owner takes it to the marina, they winterize it, and they put it on the trailer and deliver it to their house, whether it be on blocks or
But I see it as an issue of whether it's storage related or activity related.
seasonal storage usually.
Okay, I'm just going to, I think you're coming before us because you're trying to correct a problem that exists now. Do you have a problem with boats being called in on jack stands or flying bridges or whatever?
I do not.
Okay. Why don't we just take care of this Band-Aid first? We
Right,
can always
figure it out.
revisit this down the road in a year to go if you all of a sudden get inundated with people saying, hey, wait a minute. Does that sound fair? Okay.
Yep.
I think we can get this passed at town meeting. Do we have room on the docket? Did they give us enough slots?
We can put as many slots as we want on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I
We
thought
gotta
they
just-
usually,
Nope, our January 2nd meeting is our last chance, because I need to get it to the board, town administrator's
all right,
office.
you're
the
lucky.
next day.
Don't do it again
So,
so late. Here we go.
One-
Honestly, it's my
one-
fault. He mentioned it earlier, and I just didn't.
All right.
One suggested modification
I'll
to
take that.
Joanne's query, change the language from on a registered trailer or other, or supported otherwise. And, maybe, as long as the boat's registered, we know that it's not just a piece of junk that's going to fall over on a.
Take out reference to the trailer altogether.
You
You
could do
could
that
have
as
language
well.
that's something like one registered boat
Right.
may be stored on a residential lot, because it's either temporary storage or daily storage or monthly storage, depending on,
What if it's an acre lot and the boat owner has two?
Then they have enough room to move it somewhere else.
behind the front face of their property. You can have as many boats as you want behind the front face.
Behind the
of your
front face of the
property.
house, you can have as
Unless
many
you
as you
get so
want.
many
It's the
where you
ones
would be
that,
considered
you know,
boats.
what I'm trying to address is the weekend
in front.
boaters.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
why don't we-
those,
Why don't we just keep it on the trailer to start with? Let's make this clean and simple.
I disagree.
Just fix it. You don't think it's going to pass at town meeting? What do you
I think it's going to pass town meeting with I asked the building inspector, I said, any problems with the other boats being complained about in town when they're stored the way that Joanne referenced, and he said no. So why do we need to even go down that road, excuse the pun? Why don't we just take care of the problem that seems to have cropped up all of a sudden with a slew of violations of 17 in a given day or something? So why don't we just take care of that problem? The other one doesn't seem to exist.
I guess I'm not following you. Do you want the language on a registered trailer in or out?
I want, just keep it the registered trailer, and let's just take care of that problem. I don't see, he said there's no other problems, people calling in saying, I'm
I
complaining
can't,
about my boat.
you can't park it in front of your house, you can't store it in front of your house, though.
You can now on a registered boat on a registered trailer.
No, well, under this proposed amendment, you would be able to.
Right, I just don't want to put in, taking out, putting in that you're allowed to also maybe store a registered boat on a jack stand, this and that. Why don't we just take care of the problem he seems to have come up with?
I don't think it's a function of how it's stored. I think, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Mark. It's the fact that it is stored somewhere not properly now. Either it's not on the front or the side or the back. It's not on the side or the back.
Correct.
The thing that holds it up, I don't think is at issue.
He says all the complaints, though, are the ones on wheels.
generally the ones on wheels. I'm not aware of any complaints of boats on
But
stands.
they are illegal if they're in the front.
Technically, they're,
Yeah,
even if I don't know about them, they're still,
My boat now is illegal.
technically, yes.
Technically, it is. And as are others.
I'm sure there's others out there.
Okay. No, the one thing
We've
I
seen
never,
them in our neighborhood, Tom.
Yeah.
Bass River. Almost everybody's got a boat in their yard. Some on the side, some on the back.
but they're allowed
some
on
in
their
the
side of the boat.
And
But anyway,
as Joanne said, those boats are gone in the spring as soon as, as soon as May
Yeah,
1st
as
comes
soon as
around. They're in the
April 1st
water,
comes,
they're
they're-
painted and in the
they're gone.
water.
I would just like to suggest that we not have language that suggests the method of, the method of support, if you will.
Okay. I mean, the one thing in my life I never want is a boat, so I have no fight in this whatsoever. How say the board? Should we just open it up to one registered boat in the driveway, or do you want to keep it the way the building inspector wrote it? Simple up or down?
No, I want to see the use of jack stands and blocks as well. I agree with Joanne, because I think there's a lot of people that use that, and I don't want to see it
No, that's fine.
misinterpreted.
That's great. This is, Norm, Lee, Tom?
I have no thoughts on it. Never even thought about a boat.
How can that be?
Let's talk about golf.
I sold my 2 boats, so I don't.
Okay. Mr. B, your deciding factor. How do you want to do it?
I think I think what Tom Roach has suggested is correct. There should be that definition.
Okay.
Do we
Could
want,
you
so we want to add stuff in? We want to add registered trailer?
There's only a
or
couple
just
of different ways
they
that it
just
can be
want-
stored.
so
It
just
can
want-
be stored on a
they want to
trailer, or
I-
it can be stored on blocks.
I just think you're allowing somebody to
Stored.
store a registered boat in the driveway, one boat.
Right,
Yeah.
so one registered boat may be
driveway.
parked or stored on a residential lot in the driveway, regardless of location relating to the building, providing it does not create a traffic safety issue.
There you go. Now you can have one boat in the driveway, jack stands, whatever.
Absolutely. Perfect.
And the neighborhood can take it up. Okay.
Do you have jurisdiction over nautical registrations?
No, I have the police join me if it becomes an issue.
What if somebody just purchased a boat and is working on it? And,
Have to get registered the way that the bylaw's written. So somebody, like a junk vehicle, somebody can work on an unregistered car, but after 1 year, according to the general bylaws, after 1 year, it has to be either registered or removed.
does the same apply for a boat, 1 year?
Well, it does not apply for a boat, no. Not, well, I guess if you look up the definition of a vehicle, a boat could be considered a vehicle, if we really wanted to get that technical, but I think the registered boat matters a lot. I think that, there are instances where boats sit on those stands and they rot right into the stands and then they topple over. I've seen it happen, so. But I think having it registered means that their intent is to use it, and I think that's the best way to cover that.
Okay.
Good.
The only kicker to that is on large boats, they are referred to as being documented. They are not registered in the state. So I think we should add language that says one registered or documented.
How big is a
vessel.
documented boat?
Has to be over 30 feet, and it's documented by the Coast Guard.
Is there any type of
32
symbol on the boat, like a
No,
sticker?
it has no
reason-
numbers. It
How do
has-
they identify it? How does the Coast
They
Guard
identify
identify
it
it?
by its hull number on the inside of the vessel.
The reason for
Anyway.
documentation is that there's a mortgage on the boat. That's the
Yeah,
prime reason.
Yes, and that it has to be, I think, registered with the National Maritime Service.
Well, the Coast Guard,
Yeah,
that's a recommendation because of the mortgage.
yeah.
Told me, I don't know anything about boats.
How big a boat do we want stored on someone's residential lot?
I think that'll actually cover itself. Honestly, I think nobody wants to put a 50-foot boat in their driveway.
You're saying,
But a 30 or a 32-foot boat, I mean, I've stored mine properly.
how big is your boat, Joanne?
Properly, this was another one I had.
Oh, and how big was it?
It was a 32-foot sailboat, and it was documented, so it had no MS number on it.
So sailboats are an interesting concept. I mean, are we talking sailboats?
This is
Or are we
boats.
talking?
All boats.
All
It's
boats.
a boat.
All boats.
All boats.
So how tall of a mast do you have sticking out?
The mast is down.
They lay 'em over.
Down.
Down.
Ever
So
What
what
raises it,
I don't know anything.
Ever try
I'm
to-
like Norm.
Ever try to get on the highway with the mast
but
up?
what will raise it is its keel size.
Right.
It'll sit higher if it has
Yeah, okay.
like a fairly significant keel. It'll automatically sit higher.
So one registered or documented?
Documented.
And people are going to ask, Mark, what does documented mean? Documented by what? By who?
By the United States Coast Guard.
It's got a visa.
Oh, you
to be
could
in the
do
country
US,
for 6 months.
USCG, documented.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't know
Look at
anything.
Brad
I just hope
James.
they can't sleep on it out in the harbor and they can have an accessory apartment, so.
No, I'm telling you, have you seen what houseboats look like?
Yes, I
They'll-
have.
They could make them look exactly like your house.
There you go. All right. Okay.
And there's some place already in here that you cannot live on your boat. You can't, or recreational vehicle, all of those.
It's already in the bylaw.
But only if it's parked legally in your driveway.
No, not even
No.
if it's
I'm
parked legally in
kidding.
the driveway.
Not if I find out about it.
Cape Cod
Not if I
Commission.
find out about it.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Please don't come back.
I need to check with you as to that neighborhood you checked.
Cape Cod Commission Regional Policy Plan.
Yep. Quick update. I had sent you guys, but the copy of the letter that the town sent to the regional, to the Cape Cod Commission on the draft regional policy plan. They had like 10-page summary of all of the comments. It's on the website. I don't really know exactly what the process is after this, but they will ultimately be going before the commission and the Assembly of Delegates to pass the RPP. But at this time, they have the technical bulletins. The 14 are out for public comment. They went out on November 29th, and we have a very long 30-day public comment period for this information.
Over the holidays.
Over the holidays, and the 30 days is due, so the comments are due by the December 29th. So,
You had suggested a 60-day.
I had suggested a 60-day.
It's not going to
No.
happen?
No. I'm still going to comment on that, on the comments, that I think that we should have had a longer period of time. It's also unclear whether, the edits, that the comments from the RPP may edit the RPP, which meant they edit the technical bulletins, which are based on the RPP. So it's kind of like maybe a little bit of an iterative process. But the one thing that they didn't put out for any public comment was those place-type maps. It's just the technical bulletins that are out for public comment. I've requested from the Cape Cod Commission to get a map of Yarmouth that shows the 3 place types that they've mapped, which is the natural, the activity center, and the industrial centers. I've sent out the technical bulletins to some staff to see if they were interested in maybe reviewing and providing comments. But one of the things that I did notice is, was part of the RPP question mark was how many of the, how much do place types matter with regard to the technical bulletins? And the vast majority of them do have something that's slightly different depending on the place type that gets documented. And I think most of my comments will probably be related to that and the fact that we're going to be mostly commercial suburban development, so we want to make that as easy to do as possible. And again, these are only applying to DRIs, developments of regional impact. They're not applying to our regular, most of what we see here. I've been here 6 years and I've only seen one DRI in Maplewood. So that's the update on that.
The Community Activity Center, we have only one,
Yes.
and your comments focused a lot on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there any chance they're going to change that?
See,
Because that's the last place we would want to have any kind
And
of
have you heard back
significant
from them?
development.
No, I haven't heard any responses on the comments. The impression I got was that they weren't going, they had gone to a great deal of effort to come up with a criteria with which they would develop a community activity center. One of them didn't include getting comments from the towns. But the thing is that how you define those activity centers, a lot of them are already in the RPP. So it's kind of like, it's like the chicken or the egg kind of thing here. But I don't know whether they're going to be changing any of that. The discussions we get is, oh, well, as you develop and you move forward, you'll find that your suburban development will turn into a community activity center. I'm not really sure how important it is, because right now I'm just comparing what is the methodology allowed for suburban development compared to what it is for community activity center, and how do they differ? And I think a lot of my comments will be trying to bring some of that suburban development back to what they have for community activity center. And one of the other things that I recommended, I mean, the suburban development is those big subdivisions in addition to commercial suburban development. And I really think that they should have separated those, because, you know, what you would be doing, you know, more in a Captain's Village area is going to be completely different than what you would want to do, and the criteria and the strategies you'd want to do to meet on Route 28. But they didn't, I don't know whether they're going to be doing that.
I thought you hit a lot of high points here, Kathy, on this, and
Yeah.
There's a lot of information, a lot of meetings.
just that one community activity center, our location, it just didn't make a lot of sense.
It certainly doesn't match our zoning in any way. And I know that they didn't really want to go by zoning, because I think a lot of times people's zoning is obsolete. I think in Yarmouth, we spent a lot of time trying to get the zoning that we wanted in the right spot.
Well, we certainly expressed our concerns with them when they were here. And
I guess that's where I'm going with this. What weight can we bear as a board in terms of communicating officially with them our concerns?
I think they're going to have a public hearing on it. I think right now, I guess the commission staff members, and Jack's in the other room, he probably knows better than I, have 30 days from that end of that comment period in order to make the revisions and get it before the commission members. And I think once they approve it, then it has to go to the Assembly of Delegates, and there's a public process, I think, for those two phases. I don't know what edits they're going to make or not make. And they have I feel bad for the staff. I mean, they have 30 days to take volumes of comments and try and make meaningful edits. It's going to be particularly difficult.
and how many towns are they working with?
How many towns put comments in?
Yeah,
Oh, a lot of people.
they're working with a number of towns besides Yarmouth, obviously. So,
Oh, and other things besides, oh, yeah, they're extremely busy. We're meeting tomorrow with the commission on the, looking at the potential bike route connections for the Cape Cod Rail Trail.
why do they put themselves in a spot and create such tight windows relative to getting the information out? I mean,
I
I can't
think
understand it.
The RPP is supposed to be a 5-year update. I think they're beyond that time frame, so they really wanted
Yeah.
to, I think they really want a 2018 date on it.
Okay, that's why they're pushing.
They've worked very hard. They've worked very, very, very hard.
I'm sure they do. When do we write the check to them, Brad?
Yeah, every year, every month, every tax payment. Minutes of November 7th. Thank you to Karen Green for standing in. Her minutes are nowhere as well done as Kathy's, but
I did them.
I was trying to suck up, Karen, really.
5 pages long.
I was trying to be nice. There you go. And give you a compliment. You don't mean finished. They weren't as nice as, okay. She did them herself, but thank you very much. They were great minutes.
I was trying to cut you off before you dug your hole any deeper.
Sorry. It's too late.
Put his foot in his mouth.
I'm trying to get out of here before 2018 ends.
Yeah,
There we
me
go. Any comments, any changes that the board seems to want to make?
Motion approved, November 7th.
Do we have
18 minutes.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any of the comments? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? There we go. Have we heard from Chris? Did he didn't hear from you at all? Okay, all right, it's too bad. All right, Board of Appeals, you've sent that to us.
Yep.
Committee updates.
We met with CPC again today,
Okay.
and we went over the applications that we left open, and we'll be reviewing those again next week. There's about 3 or 4 of them left, and we've got about $800,000 under what the total applications amount to, so we're going to have to cut down on some of those applications relative to the amount
Wow.
requested.
I know one board not even asking for money this year, so it's funny, it's 800,000, it's amazing. Anybody else, community updates? No? Board member items. Just want to make sure everybody's going to be here on the 18th or on the 2nd?
The 9th, is it the 19th?
It says the 2nd. Oh, the 19th, I'm sorry.
I don't know
Everybody's
if
gonna
I'm
be
going
here.
to make it on the 19th.
I'm sorry?
I don't think I'm going to make it on the 19th.
Okay, we may be down 1 or 2, okay, so Lee, question mark. All right. Kathy, you going to be here?
I'm going to be here.
All right.
Yeah, I'm never missing a planning board meeting again. It was so hard to prep and then catch up. It's not worth it.
That's true. It's true, all of us. You go away and you run back and go, why did I do that? Why did I go away? Correspondence, did we miss anything?
No, I've been sending, I don't think there's anything too huge.
Okay, any staff updates?
I just want to let everyone know that we have a Yarmouth housing survey that's out. It's on the town website under news. It takes about 20 minutes to fill out, but it kind of gives us some direction to the different housing committees and trust on kind of where everyone wants to see us go with affordable housing and workforce housing, what programs they're interested in.
Yeah, I probably should have been the one to push that forward, but I've been out of it for the last couple of weeks.
No worries.
But I know that Mary, the overall intent is not just to get a housing survey, but the idea is that what we were discussing earlier, the idea of affordability and et cetera, there's a lot of issues on housing that need to be addressed, and the more attention we can apply to it would be advisable.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give a shout out to the Bass River Civic Association, who all met Saturday morning and decorated Anniversary Park. It was all done with donations from our business community and residents alike. Anniversary Park is down on 28 between, let's see, that's Old Main Street and...
Four Corners.
Four Corners, yeah, Four Corners.
Yeah, it looks
North
great.
Main Street and Old Main Street as well. Yeah.
Right before the bridge, looks good.
Are there any boats up on Jack's, all decorated with white wrap? No?
Big boat.
Yep, all right. White lights and white wrap, there we go. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, one and all. Thank you, Mr. Building Commissioner. Thank you, Jack McCormick.